Today I'm going to show you guys 5 ways to farm mimics in Terraria. And we have a mimic right here. I had to wait a little bit before he would spawn. And I want to show you how I got him to come in. I'm going to show you a couple of locations to farm this particular mimic. And then I'll show you some other mimics as well. And I want to show you how to build this structure. And I want to show you some less complicated ways to farm mimics without this structure too. So let's do it. So the first things first, I'm going to let this mimic go into this lava and he is going to drop his items. And while he's coming in, I want to show you how I set this up. So these mimics spawn off screen and then they jump into the area where my mob trap is. And honestly, the best way to get the mimics to come and attack you and to spawn in general is to use dart traps that shoot pretty much out in each direction until they hit one of these mimics, and then the mimic starts coming in towards you. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to do this AFK. You're going to have to constantly be shooting off screen for these mimics to do this. And you're going to have lava in the middle of the mob farm, and they're going to make sure that it's not enough lava to destroy any of the coins that are dropped by the mimic. And the most important part about this particular trap that I have set up right here for the first one is it's on the surface. So a lot of people don't realize that you could farm mimics on the surface. They think that you have to go underground to do that. And that is unnecessary as long as you follow one very important rule, maybe 2 if you want to be very specific. Number 1, don't be next to your town. So if I bring up my map, my town's all the way over here. So I've kind of moved a little bit over. I didn't want to get too much of this desert involved. So I kind of put it right in the middle here. And we have it going out in both directions. But the most important thing is you have to keep the natural dirt background. You're not allowed to put your own in. This is technically classified as dangerous background since it's not yours. And you need to keep that intact in order to have the mimic spawn. You also need to be standing in front of this dirt wall when you are waiting for the mimics to spawn too. So that's why I leave the natural dirt walls underneath the mob farm, whereas most people would put in their own wooden walls or they would put in stone walls. Leave the dirt walls if you want mimics to spawn on the surface. And you are going to use battle potions if you can. You're going to use water candles as well to increase spawn rate. I have a water candle right here. You're going to use a shadow candle, which probably isn't necessary specifically for the mimic farm, but it's always good to have them in your mob farms because it'll allow spawning of enemies that don't spawn unless you're moving. Also, it dispels the peace of towns, so it keeps the mob rate high. And you also have 2 dart traps, one facing in each direction with a second timer here that allows, which you turn on and off in order to shoot. And I'm just going to show you the wiring as well from this. So if I get my grand design, I can see the wiring. The wiring goes from the timer to the dart traps. So I showed you already how to get the mimics to spawn on the surface. I'll show you a little bit more of the details about this when we go back up here. But really quickly, make sure there's enough room and flat surface on each side of the dart trap so that every part of the screen, when you're fully zoomed out, is covered in the dirt walls behind you. So the second place that I like to farm mimics, the same type of mimics that we showed already, is down in hell, because you tend to have a very flat surface when it comes to your hell bridge, and there's some very basic and important items that you get in hell from the mob spawns. So part of me showing you how to set up one of these mob farms, I'm going to show you how to do the wiring right now. So we're actually going to take away the 3-second timer here, and I'm going to take away the 1-second timer here, and I'm actually just going to replace them just so you can see me doing it. So we're just going to remove these wires. Now, the problem with doing this in hell is you have these fire imps who are pretty much going to make it impossible for you to do this AFK. Plus, some of the slimes add more lava to the mix, which is going to destroy a lot of the coins from the mimics. So it's probably better off to do this on the surface, but hell is a very good place to do this as long as you don't plan on staying AFK and or you have a good summon. So what you want to do is you want to put your 1 second timer here on a platform that is 2 across, and the reason why it's 2 across is just so you can put a candle on top as well. And you want to have it right underneath the bottom corner of the left side of the mob farm. And then you want to put a dart trap, and you want to make sure that it's facing in the right direction. And you do that for both sides. And I'm going to use a half-second timer here. It doesn't really matter if you use a half-second timer or a 1 second timer. The dart traps will fire at their own natural rate anyway, as long as you're not using a 10-second timer or anything like that. And then we're going to wire it up. So it's very simple. You just get the wire, get the grand design, make sure you have wire, turn it on to wrench, and then wire those up. And then you just right click on the 1 second timers to turn them on. And you get your 1 second timers from the mechanic. So you buy them from the mechanic NPC. And I also have a heart statue down here just so I can get some hearts while I'm waiting, especially since, as I mentioned already, this is not really an AFK version of this farm. And I would also recommend that when you're in hell specifically, that you pop out at some point and just make sure that your surface is flat, because I had to flatten this surface around here. This was stepping down, and watch out for your own dart traps too, by the way. It was stepping down and the dart trap wasn't able to travel. Another way to farm normal mimics in Terraria is to go to hell and use your hell bridge to go from side to side, constantly shooting out towards the edge of your screen. And if you hear a clink, it means you've hit a mimic. Now, if you do this regularly, you just go back and forth, you will come across some mimics. A lot of the times you'll actually see the mimics off your screen, off of your hell bridge, and you just give them a hit because they'll be sleeping and you have to wake them up. But it's my least favorite way to do it because you spend a lot of extra time moving back and forth on your map. Best thing about this though is you can kind of turn your brain off and listen to some YouTube videos or something in your background. But even then, I still don't recommend doing this one completely. I used to do this all the time and it just takes hours to get your mimics, whereas with the mimic farms, it doesn't. So what I often would have done in the past is I would set my base up in a corrupted area in hell, which increases the mob spawn. And then you just shoot out to the side, each side, and eventually there will be a spawn of a mimic on the sides of the screen. I recommend using the endless musket pouch for this so that you don't end up using up any ammo. And you can do this with the clockwork assault rifle. I'd also recommend putting down one of the water candles if possible. So you can, just to avoid it from getting hit with lava, what I usually do is I just put a couple of these here. Let me just kill this real quick. And then I put this at the top. So I just put some platforms down for the water candle to be held at the top. If you are to put the water candle down near the bottom, it might get hit by lava and it'll be deactivated. Some of the more experienced people in here will recognize a problem with this build, and that is there's a lot of enemies spawning below me, and that's taking up a lot of the spawn, which is going to stop the mimics from spawning. So 2 things you can do to avoid this is to have a weapon like I do that goes through surfaces so you can kill the bats underneath. Or you can just try and build your bridge or try and build your farm for the mimics above a lot of lava. So the next way to farm mimics in this game are the special mimics. You can farm these using the mob farms like I showed you before, but it's very, very dangerous. So you're being warned now. I would recommend not doing it this way. If I'm in the hollowed biome, and I am pretty much using my mob farm to spawn these guys, they can go through walls. So you're standing here, you spawn one of them and they come down and hit you. You have to get out of there as quickly as possible so that you can start kiting it. You can do that as long as you are strong enough. However, what I like to do is I like to go to my anvil and I like to make wooden chests. We're going to make 2 wooden chests here, one for each of the mimics that we're going to farm. So it's 2 different types of mimic and 2 different types of places that we're going to farm them. And then if you use your souls of light and souls of night, you can make keys. So it's going to take 15 keys to make a souls of light key, and it's going to take 15 souls of night to make a key of night. And we're going to fight these things in 2 different locations on this map, and that way you'll see where I usually fight them. When you are trying to do this, I'd recommend the frostbow for this one. The mimics are pretty easy if you use the frostbow, and you have access to it before the late games. You're going to put down your brown chest, you're going to right click on it, and then you're going to put the key of light into the empty chest, and it's going to spawn the hallowed mimic. And we're going to fight the hallowed mimic and get its items. Daedalus Stormbow is the main item we're looking for here. When he closes up like this, be careful because he's going to hit you. And we are going to make very easy job of that. I don't really need any of his drops. He drops a lot of gold, so maybe we do need some of that. Now we're going to fight the equivalent, but we're going to fight it in hell, and this is my recommendation for anyone who doesn't have a sky bridge. You can fight these things in hell too. So we're going to put down the empty chest, and we're going to put the key of night inside the chest, and we're going to spawn the other version of this mimic. So I don't normally fight these things in hell anymore. I used to, and the reason why is because they are very strong, and you're going to have constant mobs spawning around you, making it way more difficult to avoid taking damage. So my advice is to do this on a sky bridge, but you can do it down here and in hell as well. So how to build a mob farm itself really quickly. I want to show you that you probably want to dynamite out an area at the beginning to get your mob farm started. And then you pop down to the middle. And as I said already, make sure that either side of your screen is dirt walls. You do not want to be able to see a gap on either side. And then just pick the middle. Try and find the middle if you can. You can be very specific here and fill the entire area underneath with sand as well to stop enemies from spawning underneath, but that isn't 100% necessary. It's personal preference mostly. I prefer not to do it because it takes way too long just for one mob farm. And you pick a spot and you mine 2 blocks. This is pretty much how we're going to get started with this. And then you mine down. Now you want to go slightly back up and hit these 2 blocks here, 3 blocks actually, and you want to be able to fit your head into this area. And now we're going to go across. And you just pretty much want to have 1 block of blocks above your head, and you want to make sure you leave a 3 deep gap in order to be able to fit in here yourself so you can collect the items. And I usually just do it by eye. I just go across like that. We can make it bigger if we need it later. And technically, the area down here is cosmetic. You can put NPCs down here if you like. But I usually just make a little space down here. Put some maybe decorations in there. Put an NPC in there. And we're going to fill this in with platforms. And those platforms are going to allow us to move up and down a lot easier without having to worry about our head hitting off the blocks above us. So if you have a good summon for this, it's brilliant because it'll do things like kill King Slime while he's trying to annoy me. You've no idea how hard it is to record Terraria videos sometimes, because between blood moons and solar eclipses, they always know that you're trying to do something and they will try their best to interrupt you. But if you have a good summon like I do, you won't have to worry about any of that. Want to make sure that all of the floor above our head is blocks. We do not want it to be grass. I mean, it can be grass, but it's going to look ugly as hell. So you have to do this part before you do the rest, or you're going to end up with a problem when you put the lava in. So I'm just going to go back up, and I'm going to teach you how to do this and which measurements you're going to need for it. So what you want to do then is you want to get your dart trap, and you want to make sure it's facing the correct direction and put that down as the first block that you're going to be working with. And you want to have 10 on each side. So you do the exact same thing on this side. Now we're going to try and have maybe 7 blocks here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's when the next 10 is going to be. So you don't want the mimics to be jumping over from one side to the other. And then you can remove these crystal blocks then as well. Next thing you want to do is make sure that the sides are flat. So you are going to get your hammer and you're going to hammer the edges until they make a flat surface diagonally up towards the top of your farm. And this is going to be good to capture any of the enemies that are going to be coming up. I won't finish the other side because I don't need this, and I will have to take it down at the end of this video anyway. And I have a video on how to make a full mob farm in a previous video that you could check on your screen. So I think that covers everything on how to farm mimics in Terraria. If I forgot to mention anything, please let me know and I will try and catch that in another video in the future. But for now, thank you very much for watching today's video and I'll see you guys in the next one.